Today we're going to talk about 4 myths on happiness that you might be buying into that are actually making you miserable. These myths are based off the book, The Happiness Trap. I encourage you to check it out yourself. When we buy into these 4 myths, we create a trap for ourselves. We set ourselves up to struggle against our own human nature, which is a struggle that we can't win. The purpose of this video is to help expose these 4 myths and replace these myths, these beliefs on happiness that are false and inaccurate, with healthier and more accurate beliefs that help you develop the psychological flexibility to reduce suffering and create the space for true happiness, true contentment, and joy to flood into your life. In tech sales and in life, a happier, more content person is going to be more productive, more effective in their conversations with customers, and they're going to be more motivated to achieve their goals. And I'm wishing that type of contentment and joy for all of you. You deserve it. If you find this video remotely helpful and encouraging, make sure to give that like button a love tap. The YouTube algorithm loves that too, and will show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. And make sure to subscribe for weekly sales, mental health, and personal growth hacks that you can chew on like snacks. Let's dive into it. The first myth is that happiness is the natural state of human beings, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The statistical probability that you or I experience some type of psychiatric disorder in our lifetime is 30%, and that happened to me. In the pandemic, I moved to Los Angeles from Austin, Texas, and I fell into a clinical depression. And I remember the day when I woke up and the thought escape popped into my head for the first time. It was a really scary and dark place. And that depression prolonged itself until I finally surrendered to how I was feeling and stopped resisting my negative emotions. I stopped throwing in additional negative feelings like being upset at myself for being depressed or disappointed in myself for being depressed. And when I finally could truly accept how I was feeling and commit myself to positive action, I started to climb out. This is the basis for what the book The Happiness Trap describes as acceptance and commitment therapy. As human beings, we face a whole slew of problems like loneliness, depression, relationship issues, work stress, isolation, prejudice, and lack of meaning and purpose. And that's okay. The mistake is to think that everyone else is happy and you're not, because that's dead wrong. Depression is one of the most costly and debilitating diseases in the world, and 1 in 5 adults are likely to experience a clinical depression at some point in their life. 1 in 4 adults are likely to experience a drug and or alcohol addiction. And 1 in 2 adults are likely to seriously consider suicide, at least for 2 weeks or more at some point in their life. Again, I'm a really positive guy, more positive than most people, but I went to those depths myself. And in fact, it made me stronger and more resilient, and I learned a lot about myself. I gained more empathy. The point is, it's okay to feel that way. You can make it through, you're not alone. And happiness is definitely not the natural state of all human beings. It's counterintuitive, but when we can accept that difficult truth, it's truly liberating. Cheers to continuity errors. Now I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, about to enter into a personal growth retreat through Sai Seminars. I encourage you to check out Sai Seminars or any other type of personal growth retreat. They cause breakthroughs that you can apply to your career in tech sales or in your personal life. I'm definitely going to make a video in the future to talk about these types of seminars and if they're worth it or not. I would say they are. That said, let's dive into myth number 2. If you're not happy, you're defective. The Western world tends to assume that mental suffering is abnormal. It's seen as an illness and a product of a mind that's defective. When we look at mental suffering this way, it causes us to criticize ourselves and self-flagellate anytime we experience difficult thoughts or emotions, and that's not helpful. Acceptance and commitment therapy, which again is highlighted in the book The Happiness Trap, would say that the natural thinking process of the human mind will lead to mental suffering. What if our brain is actually just doing a great job at the job it evolved to do? The reality is that our primitive lizard brain developed in a world that was fraught with danger. It became great at predicting and avoiding that danger and basically being a don't get killed device. To this day, our brain constantly evaluates, is this helpful or not? Is this harmful or not? Is this dangerous or safe? You get the picture. But now the threats aren't woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. It's getting rejected or embarrassed in public. It's getting a speeding ticket.
it's losing your job. Of course, when our brain is worrying about things that might not actually happen, we're causing ourselves a lot of unnecessary stress. But again, our brain evolved to be hardwired for mental suffering, to constantly evaluate, compare, and criticize ourselves, to focus on what we're lacking, to rapidly become dissatisfied with what we have, and again, to create all these made-up scenarios that will probably never happen and get really stressed out about it. So maybe in some twisted way, we should give our brain credit for doing an amazing job at what it originally evolved to do. And let's show some self-love, some self-compassion, and accept that childlike lizard brain for what it is. At the least, maybe that'll prevent magnifying additional suffering on top of what we're already experiencing. Myth number 3 is to create a better life, we need to get rid of negative feelings. Let's be real, we live in a feel-good society obsessed with chasing more happiness. I'm guilty of this myself. We're told to try and eliminate negative feelings and replace them with more and more positive ones. But there's a catch, because the things we value most in life come with a range of feelings, both good and bad. For example, a long-term intimate relationship will bring the joy and excitement of love and connection, but eventually you know you're going to run into disagreements and conflict and disappointments because no partner's perfect, and eventually loss and tragedy and separation through death. Those are some mental vegetables right there, tough truths that we don't want to hear but are helpful. I even think about my beautiful new puppy, Bella. She's only 4.5 months old, but I've had the thought she will die eventually, and that's okay. It's so worth living and loving in life. But we have to acknowledge that even the best things come with negative feelings and experiences as well. And of course, when you take on a new business project or start a company, it's exciting, you're motivated, you find success, but there's also a lot of fear, anxiety, and struggle on the way there. So I would say that to create a better life, you don't need to focus on eliminating negative feelings, you need to find something purposeful and worth struggling for. And myth number 4 is that we should be able to control what we think and feel. But the reality is we have a lot less control over our thoughts and feelings than we give ourselves credit for. What we can control is our actions, which are what lead to a rich, full, and meaningful life. A lot of self-help says that if you challenge your negative thoughts and feelings and constantly flood your brain with positive thinking in its place, you'll find happiness. But that's wrong. As we talked about earlier, our brain evolved over years and years to think the way it does, to devolve towards suffering, and a few positive thoughts isn't going to do much to change that. Challenging negative thoughts and replacing them with positive thoughts might make you temporarily feel halfway decent, but it's not a good long-term solution. There are psychological strategies to replace your negative thoughts and feelings with good ones, but it's like putting a band-aid on the problem, and the negative thoughts always come back. And as your level of distress increases, your ability to control your thoughts and feelings lessens and lessens. And the problem with myth number 4 is that when we buy into it, we feel inadequate when we find out that we actually can't control our thoughts and feelings as much as we thought we could. You can see how myth number 4 is unhelpful and leads to more self-flagellation. What's actually helpful is to accept your negative thoughts and take positive action to create a rich, full, and meaningful life in spite of the mental suffering that is characteristic of the way that the brain evolved over time. Man, that was a mouthful, but hopefully a helpful insight. Well guys, that's all I got for you today. If you found this video remotely helpful and encouraging, make sure to give that like button a love tap. The YouTube algorithm loves that too, and will show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. And make sure to subscribe for weekly sales, mental health, and personal growth hacks that you can chew on like snacks. Happy selling and happy living.